A sitting U.S. senator was just caught cheering on Iran.
Hey, Trey, could you give me an idea? Are we letting ships through? Because we're seeing different reports. First, nobody's getting through. Then we boarded a ship that tried to get through. Do you have any reporting that talks about what's really happening in the Strait?
Yeah, the United States is allowing any vessels who are passing through this area to make their way to their final destination as long as they're not coming from Iranian ports. There were some reports overnight indicating that 26 vessels from Iran's shadow fleet were able to make it past the U.S. blockade. There is no evidence of that, and despite what one Democratic senator talked about, there is a concerted effort by the United States to ensure that any vessels that are coming from Iranian ports are turned around or seized, as we saw with that one cargo ship over the weekend.
So, Trey, that was just Iranian propaganda, right?
Yes, absolutely. And the shadow fleet that the senator is talking about is used to directly fund Iranian proxies across the Middle East, including Hamas, the Houthis, and Hezbollah, who are directly responsible for killing U.S. citizens. And so the shadow fleet is a very serious problem. It is not getting past the U.S. blockade, according to all reports and information that we have from the region. But it is a very serious issue that the U.S. Navy says they will crack down on, not just in the Persian Gulf, but also around the world, including in the Indo-Pacific.
And now there's increasing voices that are looking to get him expelled from Congress this week. Let me give you all the details. So it all started yesterday afternoon with what was a fairly innocuous post on X. In this instance, this account, Ali Vayez, he posted a link to an article that said that potentially 26 Iranian shadow fleet vessels may have made it past the U.S. blockade in the Strait of Hormuz. Well, then this gets very interesting because Senator Chris Murphy, progressive out of Connecticut, he replies back to that post with one word: awesome. This is disturbing because we're in the middle of a major conflict in the Middle East, and we have a sitting Democratic senator who, if he's being sarcastic or not, is totally demoralizing our U.S. military and potentially cheering on our adversaries. But it gets more interesting because you need to know a little bit more about Chris Murphy before you jump to a conclusion on if he was being sarcastic or not. So earlier this week, Chris Murphy joined a number of progressives, both in the House and in the Senate, as speakers at what is basically a World Economic Forum light. This is a global conference of progressives. In this instance, this was held in Barcelona. Again, just over the weekend, this is a snippet from sitting Senator Chris Murphy out of Connecticut. This is his speech. Let's have a listen.
Want to bring you greetings as well from a nation that is in crisis. I'm not going to sugarcoat the gravity of what we face right now in the United States. This is the most significant threat to American democracy since the Civil War. Donald Trump in our country is trying to end our democracy. We are not on the verge of a totalitarian takeover. We are in the middle of it. He is trying to seize control of our courts, of our law enforcement, of our media, of our elections. His goal is oligarchic capture.
So again, this is reminding us all of the talking points of those No Kings protests, right? Donald Trump is breaking federal law. He's trying to get the Gestapo and the police out there, and he's got a total lack of disregard for the Constitution. There's no facts or substance to anything that Chris Murphy's saying, but you can see in the crowd, they're all cheering him on. This is what the progressives really think. Well, the problem is what Chris Murphy also really thinks came out in a Federalist article back in 2020 by reporter Molly Hemingway. In this instance, you can see that a source said that sitting Senator Chris Murphy, he sat with a secret meeting in Munich back in 2020 with an Iranian foreign minister named Zarif. Well, this is exactly what they accused Donald Trump and his administration of doing both in 2016 and in 2020. Now, sources, again, have now confirmed And Chris Murphy himself has confirmed that this did, in fact, take place. So now Chris Murphy has now responded on his X post saying, hey, okay, I can't believe that I have to clarify this, but obviously Trump's bungled mismanagement of this war is not, quote unquote, awesome. I was being sarcastic. But was he? We know the history of Chris Murphy in having covert and confidential meetings with Iranian sources that go back as far as 2020. So back to the original point. Was Chris Murphy here in this post being sarcastic? I'll leave that up to you. But I think what we could all agree on is that when it comes to where the Progressive Party is presently, they're totally missing where the voting bloc of America is in trying to call Donald Trump out as a tyrant and as a king, right, with these no king protests. This is where progressive Chris Murphy is. And specifically, this is where he is, where he's cheering on Iranian shadow fleets in the finagling past the U.S. blockade that's put in place by the U.S. Navy. Now, I'll leave you with this again, and I mentioned it earlier, but I want to stress this. Let's assume, I think it's silly, but let's assume that Chris Murphy was being sarcastic. At a minimum, it is totally off limits for a sitting U.S. senator to say anything publicly that could be disparaging of the effectiveness of the U.S. military and that can be interpreted by active service members as disparaging their efforts or somehow demeaning what they're trying to do and defend our interests overseas. So I don't buy it, Chris Murphy. I think you have a lot of explaining to do. And something tells me that this little apology of sarcasm that you put back up just 18 hours later after you saw the uproar online calling for you to be expelled from the Senate, I don't think this is over. So if you like stories like this, please do us a favor. Like this video, drop a comment down below if you think I missed something or if you agree with me. And also be sure to subscribe to the channel because our very next story is one that you're not going to want to miss, and we stay in Iran. This is all of the details that you need to know about the FBI's arrest just 2 days ago of an Iranian arms dealer in Los Angeles. Right as she was trying to board a flight at LAX going to Turkey, the FBI jumped in, and you need to see what she was up to since 2017 under the Joe Biden regime. All of those details coming up next. Have a look.